Good morning. Indeed, there are some jokes from the cybersecurity community, but we understand the others usually don't. Good morning. I do hope you had a bit of coffee, but even if you didn't, I'm sure we are going to wake you up. That's the point of this session, is to sober you up. I come on behalf of DiploFoundation, which is an international educational institution. We do a lot of training in digital policy issues. And I'll try to, sober you up a little bit. We usually all know what the linear function looks like. What we unfortunately usually don't know or are not aware of how the exponential function looks like. That's when the things suddenly go wrong and we can't do anything about it because it's too late. My message is that unfortunately cybersecurity risks today are sort of following the exponential functions. The risks are usually a multiplication of the vulnerabilities, the threats, and the assets that we want to protect. And as I'll try to show, each of those components actually follows, or the risk follows almost the exponential function. But I want to tell you that through a story, which is called The Secret Life of a Cyber Vulnerability. We did this in the form of a comic book, so I'm adapting this to the presentation. And I'll try to guide you to a story which may actually start in Bratislava, in one of the big shopping malls where the company, let's call it company A, produces a new software or new device. And of course, you know how it is. The crowd is in front. Everyone wants to buy the new product, shinier, beautiful. We want to show that we have a new thing. Across the street, there is a company B. The competition, well, they don't still have a new product. So in the premises of company B, the programmer, let's call him Marco, he's working hard night to try to finish the code by the deadline. The code is not simple. Most of the devices today have millions of lines of codes. Making a simple syntax error produces a flaw. And there is quite the pressure on him to finish. Well, the next morning he actually finishes, but he's aware that there is a number of vulnerabilities in the code. So the team gathers up and he's reporting, and the team says, well, we need to release the product as soon as possible. We need to catch up with the competition. We'll patch the flaws later. We know we have thousands of flaws. We'll patch them later. So what happens is, ta-da, company B has a new product. Yes, it has some vulnerabilities, but again, we'll patch that later. Lesson number one, vulnerabilities are everywhere, and we are keeping them in. There is no liability, or very limited liability of the business sector over security products. We as users, we have a demand for newer, brighter, shinier, not for more secure. So what can we do? Well, firstly, we need to change the responsibility liability framework. Secondly, we need to change the demand for security. Thirdly, we need to change the approach to code. We need to definitely turn to security by design. Let's move on. The product is released. Yeah, but you have these people which are called hackers. They can be good, they can be bad. She's Elizabeth. She's sometimes good, sometimes bad. But this time she wanted to be good. She found a vulnerability in the new software of the company B, and yeah, she feels good today. She had some coffee. She actually wants to report what she found to company B. So she contacts them. She says, listen, guys, I found something quite bad in your software, and I think you should patch it. Haha. Look what they say. Well, listen, we can actually prosecute you for what you are doing. Now, lesson number two, vulnerability disclosure process is not really functioning well. There are some bug bounty programs, but in most cases, we lack the awareness of the business. We lack the training of the prosecutors and judges. We lack the policy framework for disclosing the vulnerabilities. And there are some good examples. The Netherlands, Romania, you can take a look. They've produced some guidelines on vulnerability disclosure under the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise. She's not happy with the answer. She doesn't accept that. So she turns her black hat on. She attaches the price to the vulnerability, turns to the dark market, and of course, sells the product. Lesson number three, cybercrime cooperation, particularly against such dark webs, is not really fully functional. And we still have to work a lot on the harmonization of the legal framework and cooperation in sharing the evidences. Now, her colleagues play a little bit more with the vulnerability. They produce some nice exploits, and they sell it. Now that's interesting. They sell it actually also to some of the companies, legal companies. So lesson number, that will be 4 probably, is that now we also have the business, which is creating products based on vulnerabilities. I'll remind you, Apple versus FBI case, 2015-16, where Apple couldn't unlock the iPhone of a terrorist. Well, there was a company who could. It was based on vulnerability we never found out, but the FBI did manage to do that. Some of the businesses are, of course, building the products, which can certainly be useful. Penetration testing, testing of the security, but they can also be used to penetrate into other systems, track on the journalists, activists, as it is mainly done around the world. What happens next? The company has their own partners, and, well, it's not a surprise. They sell it, the very sophisticated exploit now, to the security service. The armies are increasingly getting, well, cyber weapons. And that's lesson number 5. And that's a big lesson. The threat spectrum is changing rapidly. We are not having criminals and geeks anymore. We are having states which are stockpiling cyber weapons. States have big budgets. States have huge budgets. Quite some interest to do things. This is a game changer for all of us. We'll see in a minute. So the state, of course, tries to use the vulnerability against the targets, and it penetrates to the internet. It finally ends up in a critical facility. Let it be the electrical grid, for instance. And of course, at some point, the electrical grid, even if it is, as we call it, air-gapped, so disconnected from the internet, it gets infected. Cyber attack is on. And some of you might actually remember Ukraine 2015-16, when we had 200,000 people without electricity. Could be a warfare issue, we don't know. Lesson number 6 would be assets are becoming increasingly valuable. We are not protecting computers and data anymore. We are protecting critical infrastructure. We are protecting financial sector, business sector, communications, transport, health. We are protecting elections. We are protecting our values, our system. We are protecting lives. We were lucky that we didn't see casualties yet, but I'm pessimist on that one. The big problem is the value, the chain of supply is actually targeted. So any one of us can be used as a target to get into a big system. There is no more excuse like, yeah, who's going to attack me? We are going to be used as a target. Remember NotPetya virus, where actually the small Ukrainian company was used as a tool to attack Maersk and many big ones. What can we do? We need to protect the critical infrastructure. We need to protect the whole chain, each one of us. What happens next? The antivirus company exploits a little bit, finds about vulnerability, reports to the company B, of course. They trust the antivirus company, and they say, yeah, okay, well, we'll patch it. We'll patch it. That's the magic solution for everything. We'll patch it. So what we do, we send the patch out. Well, it doesn't really work that way. Some systems are very old. You can just imagine how many, for instance, Windows XPs are around the world, particularly in developing countries. Some systems or some people simply are not patient enough. Well, I'm sure it happened to you many times that you can't wait for the updates, you just cancel them. Some people actually do. Critical systems, well, they can't patch always, because many of their specific software is based on the software environment around that, and if they change anything in the environment, software might not work, or the warranty might be void. So they really have to be cautious in implementing the patches. Sometimes that requires weeks. So usually they don't do it immediately. What happens next is the states stockpile the weapons. But what is that? That's just a code. It's a code somewhere on a server. And suddenly we find hackers, criminals, states, which are penetrating into their systems. And we have seen that with the WannaCry virus, where actually a critical exploit of Microsoft, which was stockpiled by the US government in a safe environment, leaked. And it goes to the black market, and then it's completely out of the control. Remember WannaCry, it just goes everywhere. It crashes the hospitals, the transport systems, the small, medium enterprises. And you have a bunch of those that actually were not patched. So the lesson number 7 would be patching system is not really reliable anymore. The worst thing is that we are seeing the patching system, the patching value chain or supply chain being targeted. CC Cleaner, a product which is actually serving to clean the computers, at some point had the upgrade which was infected. So there's a big risk now with the whole patching system. We need to turn to a more secure environment. This is a complete disaster. We'll probably patch it. What can we do? Not much. Disaster occurs, and suddenly it occurs also in the critical infrastructure, in the health system. And then, well, the epilogue can be any. You can think of your own. In our comic book, we had one of the epilogues. It could be actually that Marco, the programmer, is this guy. There are some other options that you can close the story. But to wrap up, what are the messages? What can we do about that? So vulnerabilities are everywhere, particularly coming with the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, the smart cities and all of that. Threats are becoming much bigger. The stakes are huge. Assets, the value of assets are becoming much bigger. What can we do? International dialogue, negotiations on, well, control of cyber weapons and how it's used, discussion on the responsible behavior of all of us, creating the demand for more security rather than shinier, new, brighter products, and then generally trying to raise more awareness. We are trying to do it in this way. You can download the comic book as well, and let us know if you have any reflections on how Diplo can help you. Thank you.